Okay, here we go, guys. We're getting into NBA playoff podcast, and I am coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, where it is incredibly hot right now, about 105 degrees. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get into this game. To talk about it from the beginning, the very first podcast I had in the beginning of this year, I told everyone that the Cavaliers and the Warriors were going to go to the NBA Finals. This was in January. I still believe that the Warriors are going to go to the NBA Finals and the Cavaliers will be joining them. The Celtics had a really good game against the Cavs, the very first game. Let's get into it. Cavs against Boston. Obviously, Boston was home. But in the very first play of the game was a tip, and then it went straight to a layup for the Boston Celtics, and then that kind of just set the pace of the game. The Celtics were a lot quicker, and they move faster. They're younger. They want to hustle for the plays. So they're going to get those little half plays, those 50-50 plays to win the games, to get the balls, and then those will hopefully win the games for them. The C's had a huge spurt in the front part of the game that obviously the Cavaliers can never come back and win. But the big problem they were having is Terry Rozier, Scary Terry as they call him. He was just playing amazing. His team was good. He passed the ball well. He was aggressive when he needed to be, and he made a lot of good layups. Horford was playing like he needs to play. He's strong, big man in the middle. But the thing that Horford is, he's smart. His smart play will give way that the rookies can now follow him. That's what helped him out in the Sixers series. He had that one huge bucket at the end of the game and then a steal against Embiid, and then that sealed the game in Game 5, and that took it to a whole nother level. So what we also need to talk about is where the defense is for both teams. The Celtics have probably one of the better defenses in the league right now, if not the best. And I'm talking about obviously the last four teams. So of the last four teams, the Celtics easily have the best defense. But the Cavaliers probably have the worst defense. Their defense is just terrible. Like, you see J.R. Smith running around with his trying to look for a player, but the guy's already on the other side of the court, so he's halfway in between one, halfway between other, and he doesn't know what to do. And this comes down to the problems with continuity on this team is that when you have a team like the Cavaliers that have been switching around their pieces so often, and with pieces like Kevin Love hurt, there's really nothing you can do to help that defensive continuity. And that's the thing that you need here in the playoffs. Like, I still think the Cavaliers are going to make it purely because of LeBron, but once they make it to the finals, they're not going to win. They're going to get swept easily. And that's just kind of the problem right now, is that the Cavaliers are good, but they only have one player. Like, Kevin Love, he's a good number 3 option on a championship team, but he cannot be a number 2 option on a championship team, even if LeBron's your number 1. And we see that throughout the playoffs this year. There's a couple big plays in the Cavaliers-Celtics game. Horford had a huge block. Thompson, probably the only way he contributed was when he tipped it in. And now they're going to start Tristan Thompson tonight to try and play defense on Al Horford. What I think is going to happen tonight is they need to slow the game down. The Cavaliers need to slow the game down, that is. And then they need to bring it down and let the energy be more of a half and half game. You don't want a full court game because the Celtics are going to outrun you all day, because the Cavaliers are built with veterans or older players, older savvy players, where the Celtics, as everyone knows, are run by their rookies. They got Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier out there just doing crazy things. But the thing about those games that you really have to understand and watch is the mood of the game. The Cavaliers were very lethargic, slow. They were kind of feeling it out. Now we can see if that feel out stage will translate into a win for game 2. But it probably will not. They're either going to lose to a close game or they're going to get blown out again. And I think that's where LeBron and the Cavaliers are going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and then win 2 games at home, which I believe they'll be able to do. And I think after they win the 2 games at home, they'll be able to win their game 6 at home and then take game 7 just with veteran leadership. With veteran leadership and just knowing to be there. Brad Stevens is going to make a big deal. His coaching changes and coaching abilities are something you have to understand and recognize. But, I mean, he can coach all he wants, but the players have to execute the plays. So we'll see what happens with that one. So now to the Warriors and Rockets, a game that happened last night. It was a very close game in the very beginning of the game. Close in the beginning, but the role players were not hitting their shots for Houston, and I don't think that was really necessarily what Golden State wanted to do. It's just that Houston had open shots and they were missing them. This comes down to maybe some of the players on Houston talking bigger of a game than playing a bigger game, because they've been talking a lot about how they want to see the Warriors, and now they got the Warriors, and the Warriors took it to them in game 1. Kevin Durant was unstoppable. They have no one on the Rockets that can play defense on him, and it's just like everyone says, you can't stop him, you can only hope to contain him, and that's what the Rockets are going to try and do this series, but he's in the first game, you can tell that no one's going to be able to stop him. They had Capella on him. That didn't work. They had Nene on him. That didn't work. They had Mute on him. That didn't work. So the Rockets are going to struggle to find ways to defend Kevin Durant this whole series, and that's going to present a problem for him. I don't think the Rockets can go to Game 6. I think they'll probably lose in Game 5, and more likely they're going to get swept. And I think this comes down to maybe what happened last year and the year before. James Harden is a good player. I'm not taking anything away from James Harden, but he is not a primetime player in my opinion. He doesn't show up when the biggest circumstances are there. Last year when they were playing the Spurs without Chris Paul, he didn't show up in the last game. Just wasn't even there. People said they were putting out APBs on him, all that, because he just did not show up to the game. And way back in the day when he was with the Thunder and they were in the finals, he didn't show up to that game either. So now it's not really a trend yet, but James Harden does seem to struggle in the bigger moments. And we don't know if that's going to be him or if that's the team, but I think it has something to do with his attitude, honestly. Like last year after what happened with the Spurs, 2 or 3 hours later he was out at a strip club hanging out, trying to get over it. And I'm not one to say no one can go to a strip club. Do what you will. But a couple hours after a game like that, I think you should be more at home, watching film, understanding your mistakes. Take a week away from the city. Just take some time away and reevaluate what you maybe need to do to win that game, as opposed to just going out and trying to forget that game. What we also need to talk about is a couple plays. So when the Rockets had the ball in the very beginning of the game and they were up 7-0, what happened was it was James Harden went down, scored a bucket, and then Draymond, after he scored, kind of pushed him when he was still in the air, and Draymond Green got a technical. And so the technical really kind of got the Warriors going, because right after that, Clay hit a 3, or Steph did a teardrop, and then Clay hit a 3. And this is what happens, and this is what was going on in the game when you watch it, that you could see that the Warriors are hustling. They're trying to do everything they can on defense, whereas the Rockets, they're kind of just like, oh, you can go in, take a 2, and we'll get another 3. But it's not working out for them like that. And you can't switch baskets where they get an easy basket and your offense on the other end is fighting so much. The isolation as well for the Rockets was just not very good. They, on offense, were just isolating the whole time. And they need to stop doing that and kind of move away from isolation and start moving to more of a ball movement so that their role players can get some shots and then get more in a groove, and then they probably won't miss as many on the back end. Another thing that you notice in the game is where you see Steph Curry dribbling the ball, moving all his moves. When he goes to drive, he is looking to kick almost every single time, whereas James Harden's going to drive. He's looking for a foul or an and one, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you can see the difference in the team playership or playermanship on those two, because Steph is outdoing James on the offense, and James could do the same to him, but at least Steph's giving it a solid effort. He's giving an effort on defense, whereas James is just letting him go by with one hand and get an easy layup, and it's too much. The game was really kind of won in the third quarter, though, when Kevin Durant started making all those shots. Steph had a couple moves, and then he was guarded by Clint Capella. He tried to take a 3, or he tried to fake to the 3 and then take a layup, but Clint got him. Clint got a good block on him, and that helped the Rockets' momentum for a little bit. But the thing about it is, every time they had a run, the Warriors would just stop that run with another 3 of their own. And this is what it came down to in the end of the game, is that the Rockets were okay with switching baskets and the Warriors were not. They wanted to play good defense, limit the options that the Rockets had to score, and they did that. Whereas the Rockets kind of were just like, well, we're going to play an up and down game with you and we're going to score more points, which is kind of analytical driven, but you have to play two sides of basketball. There's scoring the basketball and then defending the basketball. You can't just do one or the other and just think that you're going to win the game, and that's how it's always been. That's why you always need a defensive stopper. The best teams in history have always had defensive stoppers. So that's kind of what the state of the playoffs are right now. Going into the Cavs-Boston game tonight, I think the Cavs will put up a good fight. We'll probably see early if they'll be able to win. I don't know if they're going to be able to. I think Boston's going to be still a little excited, still a little hyped up. The only way I think the Cavaliers win is if LeBron gets 40, 12, and 10. He has to have an unbelievable performance, which is what he's going to have to do the rest of the playoffs if they want to make it to the finals for LeBron's 8th straight year, which it's incredible in itself, and that's something you have to talk about all alone. But LeBron carrying the team once again, and he probably will carry them past this series. But this game's a big game for the Cavaliers. We really have to say that. This game is a big game. I think it's going to go 7, honestly, and I think the Cavaliers are going to win in Boston on this game 7, but we should see how that goes. So now for the Warriors-Rockets, I think that's going to be a sweep. Maybe they'll get one game because of the hustle of, and I don't think it's going to be James Harden. I think it's going to be Chris Paul's hustle that will get him one game, and I think he's going to have one game, either this next game at home on Wednesday or the game on Friday. I think they're going to have Chris Paul have a game because I think James Harden's almost already checking out. You see his body language on the floor, and it's just not very. It's not energetic. It's not there. He just wants to get the ball and score, but he doesn't want to play the other side of the. He doesn't want to play on the other side of the ball, which is defense, which is what you need to do if they want to be a championship team. But this is the reason why the Rockets won't be a championship team. You do not play defense. They try to get a couple players that want to play defense, but the thing about defense is it's a team And if the team as a whole isn't playing defense, one or two players are going to let up, we'll say, then the whole defensive strategy collapses. And that's the biggest problem. That's where when LeBron took off plays this year, their defense was so bad. And their defense has been bad. The Cavaliers, that is. So, Warriors are going to beat the Rockets. Cavs are going to beat Boston. And we all know what's going to happen after that. It's going to be a sweep. But we'll see. I'm going to put out another podcast tomorrow for everybody after the Cavaliers game tonight. And we'll see how that goes. Have a good day, guys.